Good morning, Karen.
Good, Anna. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good.
Good. I note when we've got the screen sharing, I can't see everyone on screen. I've got limited. Why did that just? There we go. I'll just change.
We're on screen sharing now. I think they've moved that.
Yeah. No. Okay. Now I've got the gallery view. That's a whole lot easier. We are just about time to start, but I just need to check who we've got and that we've got a quorum.
Good morning, Karen. Bruce here.
Morning, Koto.
Kia ora. How are you?
Kia ora. Get by.
Well done, Mark. I'm jealous.
Yeah, impressive.
Doing my best, but it doesn't go a lot further than that. Kia ora, Rob.
Kia ora.
Yeah, Morena, you've been practicing, Mark, have you?
Aye.
Yeah. Hi, Bruce.
G'day there, Rob. How you going, buddy?
Good, thanks. Maxine, how are you?
Look, I will just, we're right on 9:30, but I'll just give us a couple of minutes just in case anyone's having technical difficulties. I see Mia Paula hasn't joined us yet, and she's not an apology. We've got Richard and David there.
Quorum-wise, what's the requirement?
Narelle, can you confirm? You're on mute. Actually, you're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
But it looked good, whatever you said.
I think the quorum's 4.
I was just going to say the quorum's 4.
Okay.
So we got
Karen?
4. We got
So I
4
think
members. Yeah.
we have got
Okay.
quorum at this stage. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, team.
Well, look, hopefully others will be able to join us in due course, but I will start the meeting. It's just after 9:30, so tēnā koutou katoa. I'll start with the apologies. So we have one apology from Councillor McPherson for absence and from Councillor O'Leary for lateness. And Councillor Bunting, thank you for advising me this morning that your apology you'll need to leave the meeting at noon. So look, we are set down to meet through until.
Sorry, Karen, I'm not a committee member. I'm just observed. Well, I guess coming in today, but I don't think I add to quorum.
No, you don't. But thank you for attending and welcome Maxine as well.
But you're still relevant.
Kia ora. And thanks, Kieran, also for accommodating our waiata today. And Mark, I hope that you'll be staying around for that.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah,
thank you.
My pleasure. And I listened to it over the weekend. It's a beautiful waiata. Okay, so they are the apologies, and hopefully, as I say, Mia Paula will be joining shortly. So look, with regards to running the meeting, as I was saying, I don't think we will need all of the time until 3. We've got a reasonably light agenda now. But we will be breaking just before noon for that moment. So how I intend to run today is, look, I'll just move all of the motions, and if I could have somebody show their hand to second, and we'll vote with show of hands. But if you've got questions, if you could use your electronic raising of the hand, please, so I can just keep track of who wants to speak. So as I say, the focus for today's agenda, it's not a very full agenda, so I think we'll finish well before 3. We don't have the annual report to go through, but we'll talk about that when we get a bit of an update for the audit. So coming back to item 1, and that was the apologies. I'll move those 3 apologies. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mark. All of those in favour, raise your hand. Against, carried. Thank you. So confirmation of the agenda. And before I move on to that, is everybody hearing me okay?
Yes, fine.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
Karen.
Okay. Right, so confirmation of the agenda. Are there any items of a minor nature? No. Look, I'll move that we accept we confirm the agenda. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. Against, carried. Right, are there any declarations of interest? No. Great. And no members of the public wanting to speak. So we'll move to item 5, and that is confirmation of the minutes of the meeting 17th of June. That starts at page 7 of the pack. Are there any items of accuracy? No. Okay, I'll move that the committee confirm the open minutes of the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee meeting held on the 17th of June 2021 as a true and correct record. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mayor Porter, and welcome. All of those in favour? Against, carried. Thank you. Right, item 6, I'll hand over to Richard for the Chief Executive report. You're on mute, Richard.
Yep, I know I'm getting there. I was trying to open and unmute myself in Teams. I'm getting very confused now with all these different platforms. Kieran, I don't think you're aware of Council's number one risk. Number one risk is you calling a meeting as finishing early out loud.
Yeah, it was tempting fate.
And to be very clear, it is jinxed the meeting now. So I'm glad I'm still in my pajamas. I've got 2 things I want to talk to in terms of or 2.5 things. So firstly, I've flagged in a number of meetings the sort of pressure on staff. Well, one of the biggest concerns we have is we still have about 150 vacancies in the organisation. Thrown into that COVID impacts, thrown into that our reputation for being expert in our field. We have a number of staff members have been seconded into other roles around reforms and so forth, or potentially. And so we do have increasing pressure on the organisation, and that sort of comes through and potentially comes through in terms of the impact on meeting deliverables, which is important, but of more importance is probably the environment within the organisation. It does create some stress and some tension. And as a consequence, it probably increases the risk profile associated with health and wellbeing issues, either physical safety issues or wellbeing issues as well. It is an area that we have specific focus on, and if there's particular questions, I know Dan's floating around the screen somewhere, and David are here. They're doing some really great work in the recruitment space, innovating, trying to bring people on board. Our work and our value proposition to the community has improved, and also doing a lot of work in the wellbeing space. So that's the first thing I'd like to talk to. Maybe you want me to pause now and take any questions, or any questions for David and Dan, Kieran, or do you want to carry on?
Yeah, look, we'll pause there. I see I've got a question from Councillor Bunting.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, David, for all the great work you're doing. I've seen some of it. It's magnificent. I'm just thinking about the recruiting and the likes. So I guess the temptation would be to recruit from other councils, and with that comes a risk that they'll be recruiting from us. And yet finding people who are skilled enough in their fields out of the industry presents its own problem. So where are you finding the people from, firstly? And secondly, is there one particular area within the business that we are in particular trouble with, trying to get staff?
That sounds like a Dan question. Dan, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, I can. Look, Councillor Mark, we're getting people from everywhere. Look, we're closely working with agencies who are, proactively using, LinkedIn and other social media platforms to be proactive. We also advertise, and so a lot of the candidates are coming from, array of industries and sectors. So look, we're not sort of seeing any one particular sector stand out from others. Look,
Okay.
our current turnover is sitting around about 18%, which is slightly over our target. Our target is 16% turnover, which is a healthy level of turnover.
Yep.
What we are seeing is that there are higher turnovers in some of our groups. The community group, because of the nature of some of that work, does lend itself to high levels of turnover, more transient type workers. So if you think of kind of lifeguards and those sorts of things, so we do sort of see high levels of turnover in those areas. But look, we are doing a lot of good work. We're looking to target our critical roles. We have stood up a graduate recruitment program specifically targeting those key areas. We also have got a summer program, which is a nice gateway into those types of roles. And we're looking to stand up a referral program as well to try and attract and help, target, more people.
Right. So you mentioned the lifeguards, etc. So these 150 vacancies, are they in those sort of more part-time or smaller roles, or are they sort of right in the guts of the the business?
Yep. So some will be lifeguards. But look, there'll be, there's other vacancies right across all of the groups. And
that's a nationwide trend too, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to find employees anywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. So look, we're not alone. Certainly the recruitment market and low unemployment makes it more difficult for us to fill those vacancies at a faster rate. We will go into what we call a recruitment hiatus as we approach November, December. So look, it does give us an opportunity to, get on top of those active vacancies. And so look, we'll be working hard to fill those as quickly as we can with the limited resources that are available.
So what does that mean?
Sorry, Mark, can I ask one other question? Sorry, Dan, can you also respond to Mark's concerns about taking staff moving between local authorities as well?
Yeah.
Yep. So look, we don't actively go and target other staff from other councils, but look, what they are free to do is express an interest if there is a vacancy.
Yeah.
So look, that is something that we work with other councils with and on. But look, there are like for like skills. So building control officers. There's those sort of types of sectors where people sort of circle through different councils.
Yeah. Hey, well, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing.
If I could just add, Dan, you talked about the cadet program. Elected members will remember bringing that to the long-term plan discussions, and growing our own talent is going to become more and more important. Just bringing people through the ranks, and so we will no doubt at some stage need to come back to elected members because I remember that budget was halved, but and we thank elected members for what we did have, but we really need to look at ways we can continue to grow our own and bring people in at a university level and train them specifically in terms of those core roles, because the core roles are difficult to recruit for, and some sort of arrangement with a cadet where we can bond them to the organisation and grow them is really a strong lever that we can pull.
Yeah, point well made. Okay, thank you guys.
And thank you for that, David. This conversation is one that's been had around lots of board tables in New Zealand, and so we're not alone in this challenge or this risk of attracting and retaining key talent, and looking at other ways of mitigating that risk is going to be key. And so rather than just attracting outside the organisation, it's developing within it is going to be a really important strategy going forward for this organisation and lots within New Zealand. Right, Councillor Maxine, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. In the longer term, we're going to be faced with an awful lot of reforms coming, Three Waters, local government itself, RMA. Is there also some advantage to have some of those vacancies, and how can we best position ourselves for the risk in the longer term of those stranded costs that we might be faced with.
That's a really good point, Councillor. And to be fair, there's some positions that will be needed regardless. You know, in fact, some of the pressure on some of our teams is because consultants are wanting the staff. So, you know, it's not like their jobs are redundant. They're effectively just shifting from a public sector to a private sector where they potentially can earn more money. So that's real. In some areas, however, there will be some form of optimisation across multiple councils, and having a degree of vacant positions in those areas makes sense. Having said that, for the time being, we're pretty much supplementing where we can with contractors and consultants and part-time resource. We've always, as a council, tried to be the best we can, and in being the best we can, we hope that when any of our reforms come through, that our staff consider to be the best in that bunch, and so hopefully there's some certainty of them getting jobs going forward. But maintaining a portion of vacancy, not deliberately, just but through that 16 to 18% does give you that capacity. The question is, in what teams? And once we don't really know at this stage until the reform's coming out. The other aspect is some of the COVID pressure has, you know, like this lockdown and last lockdown, is adding to it. And so maintaining a degree of flexibility is great, but people are looking for certainty as well. So there's not as much flexible ambition in people. In fact, during the first lockdown, Sean Murray at his venues lost a lot of his ability to use third-party contractors for fit in and fit out, who are basically a flexible resource, because quite a few of them quit their contracting company and went off and got permanent jobs for security as well. So a big challenge here is how do we meet that market expectation as well as meet our expectations on a degree of nimbleness going forward, constantly in our heads. So good point, and I can't give you an absolute answer, but it's something we consider.
Richard, can I just add something to that?
No.
Just in terms of opportunity, like, you know, water reform, we talk about what's been bandied around as a stranded overhead, but we haven't really explored the opportunity that water reform is going to present Hamilton City Council in terms of, you know, regional shared services and other types of opportunities for us to deliver better outcomes for our community. So I think the whole stranded overhead topic is more of a topic for the smaller councils than it is for the larger councils, as we'll play more of a role in that coordinating the bigger water reform sort of initiatives.
Yeah, thanks for that, David. Always useful to look at the upside risk as well as the downside risk. Now, yep. Richard, was there anything else that you wanted?
Yep. So the other thing that's I always rated health and safety, but I think there's a good item later on, so I won't cover that off. Hey, we were successful in our judicial review with the development community in respect of their challenge on our development contribution policy. Even though we came through and having met all, we were successful on all claims, what it does talk to is a level of dissatisfaction in that community. So I'm raising it more just for information, is that we're just currently working in terms of how we can build together a more enduring relationship with that community so that we can have very direct engagement over the issues that affect them. So avoiding any future attempts or otherwise of a legal challenge. There's a whole lot of strategic conversations that we have never had with the development community that we should start having. And I want to push together, and I've worked out a very basic terms of reference, which I currently got with Blair and Chris Allen, to try and work out what an outline would look like. And then once I sort of work out what that looks like, I'll take it back through elected members for some sort of view on that.
Okay, thanks. Was there anything else you wanted to raise before I open it up for general questions on your report, Richard?
Yep, no, I'm comfortable.
Okay, look, I haven't got any virtual hands up, but I have one question, and it's something that we canvassed in our meeting earlier this morning, but I think it's useful to have the discussion as a committee, and that is just the risks involved in how they're being mitigated in your transition out of the organisation, Richard, and Lance's transition into the role. Welcome, Lance. Yep. So, Richard, did you want to start off, and then I'll hand over to Lance just to answer that?
Yeah, it's a good point, Kieran. Thank you. So from my end, it's probably the best choice for the most effective transition. So if you're thinking about building that robust handover, you've done a great job, because Lance has been front and centre of just about every significant conversation that's been had with council and with the chief executive over the last 7 years as my deputy, or last 6 years as my deputy. So Lance is very well aware, and and as we always do, we don't think the same. And so there's been really rigorous challenge and debate around approaches and so forth. So Lance has been in that camp. What I've also done is made sure that Lance is well aware of the meetings that I go to, and he's getting courtesy copied in for his choice whether he attends or not. So those chief executive-esque meetings, just to make sure he attends those. That includes like meetings with the mayor, UNISA, Metro sector, and so forth. By the way, Lance has attended those on my behalf in the past as well, so that's not new as well. And then Lance and I will have regular handovers meetings, and we have one a week to discuss various matters and put some skin on the skeleton of what he does know, or skin on the flesh of the skeleton that he doesn't know. And then specifically, Lance can talk to you now about what he's put in place to ensure that he manages his transition from his existing role to the new role as well. You there, Lance? There you are.
Lance, we can't hear you. You're not on mute, but we just can't hear you.
He gets speaking rights after October, I think.
I understand now why you employed him. Very quiet.
No, that's a very effective handover, Richard. Very effective.
Hopefully that's better now, Lance. No.
Hear me now?
Look. Yes.
Oh, God, sorry, I didn't have my headset in. I need to reconfigure my computer. Just carrying on from what Richard said, just around transition, it's always an interesting space to be promoted, because you actually got to replace yourself. So part of that transition, and you talked about mitigating risks, Kieran, is actually GM community role is quite a big role, and I'm just working through a process at the moment, having an EOI process, expressions of interest internally. That closes today, and then I should complete that within the next 5 working days, and then I'll be able to tell elected members who's jumping in. I'm going to put a person in acting until the end of February, and then just get my feet under the table as the CE, and just look what I want to do long term. So a bit of transition there, handing over to a new person so I can do the handoff with a GM community role. As Richard said, we've got a number of meetings which have been happening since the announcement, from the day after actually, and over the next 4.5 weeks, and really handing over what Richard does, working closely with Louise and Emma in the CE's office, and with my EA, Helen Schlegel, just to make sure there's a smooth transition between our two officers going forward. I'm going to put some communications out about that too, and what that means for elected members in Mangai as well. And one thing I'm doing immediately is actually meeting with each SLT member, just to talk about my style, their style, how we're going to operate going forward. Look, we all know each other very well. We've worked cooperatively, collaboratively, and collegially as quite a tight team over the last 7 years, with Richard being the CE and I've been his deputy. So it's really enhancing what we're doing at the moment, and working closely with our third tier as well. The other thing is probably just the uncertainty that the change in leadership can sometimes bring. I'll be working with Nicole just around some communications around that, and a little bit more about me personally and professionally, so people get to know me. I know quite a few people around the organisation, but not everyone. I will be getting around and actually combining that up with some health and safety observations and that sort of thing before Christmas, which is one of my priorities. And I'll be putting out comms so that people get to know me, my direction for the organisation, and the priorities moving forward. And obviously, I'll be doing that. I've been having some discussions with Mayor Paula, and I'll be doing that wider with elected members as well. There's some opportunities coming up over the next couple of months. So I'll put out a bit of a comms, keep people up to date on that. And as Richard said, I think coming from inside the organisation, I think it mitigates a lot of risks around that uncertainty that a new CE brings. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for that, Lance. I mean, I see probably three key risk areas in this transition, and that is, loss of institutional knowledge, which, as you say, is somewhat mitigated with the internal appointment, the unsettling nature and the impact that might have on vacancies. But it sounds like from, what you've told us that you're very much aware of that and have plans for communication, which I guess is the key mitigation there. And then there is the backfilling of your role. So, I feel that you've covered them well. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee of Richard or Lance? No? Okay. Look, I am aware that this is probably the last full committee meeting before Richard leaves, so I feel it would be remiss not to mark that. I know there's still a lot of water to go under the bridge yet, Richard, but I personally have really enjoyed working with you, and thank you for your input to this committee. And I look forward to working with you, Lance, in the future. Did you have anything else to add, Richard?
No, I've actually enjoyed the transition of this committee. To be fair, it's probably less now stepping on the toes of the finance committee. It's sort of swimming in its own lane now and talking more about the general risks rather than the financial risks, which I think was the evolution that needed to happen. And I've appreciated your leadership and that of Bruce as well. It's always nice for chief executives, and Lance, you'll appreciate this, having people with external responsibilities coming into the committees. It just brings a different angle and a different view. So appreciate the leadership. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, look, I'll move to the recommendation, which is that the committee receives the verbal report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, we'll move to item 7 of the report, page 15, and that's the safety and wellness report. Dan, I'll hand over to you as normal if you can take your paper as read, but it would be helpful if you could frame the key issues for us before I open it up for questions.
Great. Thank you, Kieran. Yeah, look, just in summary, we continue to focus on the key strategic programs and initiatives which we've outlined in the report, notably the strategic activities which support our safety management system, AURA, contractor management, and also the standing up of the safety and wellness team, which is fundamental in terms of us being able to deliver on those strategic programs. Look, we continue to focus on continuous improvement and moving the organisation forward to ensure that best practice and safety improvement and performance is adhered to. So happy to open up the questions and to the report.
I'm on mute. Okay, I haven't got any virtual hands up at this stage, so I'll kick off the questioning, and I promise I'll finish on a more positive note, but I'll get my biggest bugbear out of the way first, and that was, it's quite a concerning issue for me. So for those of you that don't know, as the committee chair, I have a quick look through the reports before they are published, just to make sure there's sort of no glaring issues with them. And I was surprised to see Appendix 1, page 21. That's where the notifiable events are outlined. So that's all the employees and the contractor notifiable events. There was one in there that I wasn't aware of, and it might be that I just missed somehow the email, though I did look back again to see if I could see that email notification. And there were two that I had been notified of that weren't included on the list. And to me, given the enormity of or the potential enormity of notifiable events, I was just really surprised that we're not totally on top of those. So Dan, can you just give me a bit of background on what happened there and how we can be better informed of and track notifiable events in the future?
Sure. Yeah, look, we went back through what had happened when the events were entered into Vault, the safety management system or the safety system. They were first recorded as events. So one was a near hit, one was an incident. So when we go back and pull those reports later on to compile the number of notifiables, if they've been updated, if they haven't been updated in the system, it won't pull them through. So there were 2 events that were still had the original entry and hadn't been converted over to notifiable, so they were missed, and that sits with us. Look, what we have done, Kieran, is one of the new recruits is a data and systems support analyst, and so look, we are confident that our reporting and the way we represent and present information around the data and the insights and the analytics, look, you'll see an improvement going forward. So that's something that we recognise and looking to make improvements going forward.
Yeah, I guess just for everyone's benefit, just so you know where I'm coming from and why I bang on about these notifiable events, it's because they are the events that have the potential to seriously injure or kill people. So, you know, they are serious. And, you know, we're lucky that, you know, none of them have resulted in that, but the things that we really need to be very aware of and have on our radar and not put into a, you know, a recording system and forget about. So, yeah, I would like to hope that we are across those better in future. But I would also like to say it was fantastic to see the recommendations on the service strike review that took place earlier in the year, see them closed out so efficiently. That was great to see, and it was really nice to read the story about the personal impact that flexible working hours can have. So thank you for sharing that with us. I see Councillor Pascoe's got a hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Kieran. Yeah, question also on the notifiable events. I note that 2/3 of the events that have been notified in this period relate to external parties who I believe are contractors doing council work. How confident are you, Dan, that all of the incidents involving external parties or contractors are notified to us? And I ask that question on the basis that sometimes we won't have council employees on those sites at the times that those events happen. So I suppose we're relying on the honesty of the contractor.
Yeah, that's right, Councillor Rob. What I can provide assurance around is that, you know, those contractors that we do engage are required to have their own safety systems in place and be able to demonstrate and evidence those as we bring them on. So look, they have the same obligations as we do under the Safety at Work Act. And so there is an absolute requirement that they do you know, notify us of those types of events. But we do work really closely with those larger contractors as well. We have people on the ground, whether they be project managers, and so we're working side by side with them. So look, they are generally very good at providing us notice of those types of events, hence why we're able to you know, report those, you know, through our system. And make sure that we've got good transparency around the contractor events as well as our own.
Thank you for that. And just the last question.
Sorry, Councillor Pascoe, just before you move on to our next question, can I just clarify something on that? So presumably the contractual terms that you enter into have some protections around health and safety notifications?
Yes, that's correct. We have worked with procurement to ensure that we've got good safety information and evidence that is as part of the contractual arrangements. And so, yep, we work closely with them to ensure that is done.
Yeah, and in previous committee meetings, we've heard about some good work that you're initiating with, engagement with contractors, which all helps with that relationship of trust. But really great question. Thank you, Councillor Pascoe. And you have another?
Yeah, just another follow-on question. I note 2 of the incidents involve the same contractor. Is that a concern that within 20 days, the same contractor has another notifiable event? And if so, how do we go about mitigating in future that particular contractor doesn't remain a potential risk to our organisation?
Yeah, look, it is, I guess, a reason for concern, and that is something that we work closely with that contractor through the project manager in those groups, to make sure that we follow up and ensure that we're learning the lessons from those events. So look, we can work alongside them through the investigation to make sure that they've got the appropriate mitigations and learnings. But yes, look, repeated notifiable events is something that would concern us.
And to what extent do we have a liability? Let's say one of those events, WorkSafe, decide to take action against the contractor or the external party. What sort of risks have we got as part of that investigation and the outcome insofar as WorkSafe is concerned?
So look, even though it is the contractor, look, at the end of the day, we are the principal as well. So there is, I guess, some shared liability there. But effectively, we, even though we contract out that work, we don't contract out our obligations around ensuring, safe practices in a work site. So that's something that goes hand in glove with being the principal or the PCVU.
Specifically, Rob, through the tender process, the contractor needs to meet the certain standards, and we check that through the tender process. We also ensure that we have robust processes to ensure they comply with what they put in their tender document. We also audit them from time to time with our project managers and so forth on the health and safety aspect of it all. So if there's ever an investigation into it, the whole caboodle, like Dan says, gets looked at, but there's certain expectations on due diligence for us, and a certain degree of holding the contractor to account from us, but also they need to ensure that they meet those standards. If we did everything at the front end right, the focus would be on to the extent to which they made the contribution to the outfall. So as anything with these, if WorkSafe looks at it, it's about what is the contributory impact, what they do to deal with it, how they report it and so forth. And we've got responsibility right across the end of that, but the process is quite large and beyond us. So we have to put in review processes and audits and so forth to ensure they're actually complying.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Cool. Sorry, and if I could just add as well, look, there is an important stream of work that we have commissioned and kicked off, which is actually around the whole contractor management piece. So look, we are starting to work that through, and so that will help to ensure that we've got improved systems and processes, and work really closely with our contractors to ensure that we've got improved safety standards right across.
Thanks, Councillor Rob. That was really useful discussion. Bruce, you've got a question?
Yes, and I suppose it's probably in some sense not dissimilar. It's natural to look at, I guess, these notifiable events, and I do appreciate, by the way, Dan, you keep me informed as well as Kieran, which I appreciate. From an audit perspective, and I think you've referred to this, Richard, we've got the Organic Centre, which interested me. I guess some other briefings elsewhere is that landfill transfer stations or organic centres are some of the most risky, because we have a lot of vehicle movements, we have backing of trailers, and unfortunately I've heard of other instances of people either falling into pits or being squashed against bars which control how far back you back your trailers. So in this sort of situation, do we not only be worried about the individual hurt and indeed the individual circumstances that it, but how often would you do an audit to reflect, does this organic centre, is it set up even in the right way? Do we have backing lanes that create the risk in the first place? That sort of sense of audit, is that the sort of thing that you do as well, Dan?
Yeah, can we hand that to Evelisa and that her team effectively manage that a whole lot more? Evelisa, you're comfortable to speak on this? I think you are, because you turned yourself on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Evelisa.
No worries. So the Hamilton Organic Centre, you're right. So the way that we manage waste with the public has changed considerably over the last few years. So even having people in the pit sorting through waste is absolutely not best practice anymore. And so the Hamilton Organic Centre, under the new contract, went under the new contractor on 1 July this year. So at the moment, we're working through how that organisation now manages the waste, taking on board the learnings, particularly of people having the incidents of the likes of falling into pits, etc. So it is something that they are absolutely looking at, and we're working with our contractor on to make sure that people are safe, number one, while they are actually disposing of their waste across all of our facilities.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for that, Evelisa. Hey, look, there are no other virtual hands up, but actually, Lance raised a really good point in our discussion earlier this morning, and that's about being very aware of back to work risks. So normally that's, after a long Christmas break, but obviously after, a long COVID lockdown and hopefully we won't have another one too soon, but we just never know what's around the corner. Dan, what does the organisation do to ensure that we mitigate as much as possible that back to work risk, health and safety risk?
Yep. So look, generally we work through our people leaders. So our people leaders play a really important role how we transition, back into the workplace. Look, we're fortunate. We've got IMT who provides really good structure and guidance as we navigate down or up through the alert levels. So look, we've got really good collateral guidelines and support networks to be able to support our people as they come back into the not only the office but other places of work. And so look, we're fairly confident. Sorry, I'll put it better. Look, we are very confident that we've got the support processes to help our people. And look, we just, as I said right back at the start, work closely with our people leaders to ensure that they're supporting their teams as we come back to work and start to ramp up again.
And sometimes it's as simple as actually just being aware that, hey, I might not be at the top of my game at the moment and I need to just have my eyes extra open.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And also, it's good to see that heat map on page 28. Obviously that's an evolving document, and I think there are 2 units that are not so long ago finished with their review there, but it is a good snapshot of our maturity across the organisation, and I hope to see that changing in colour in future committees. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the new reporting format. It's working really well for me. I hope it's working well for the rest of the committee.
Certainly is.
Right. So look, I don't see any other virtual hands up. So I'll move.
Excuse me, Kieran, David here. And if I can just make one quick comment, one of the things that we are focusing on, just following on from what Dan said, is that when staff are coming out of lockdown, to the real wellbeing topic around a whole heap of work or backlog that sit on our staff as well as their day-to-day roles. And we've shared this with elected members as well on certain calls, but fundamentally we need to make sure that our people leaders work with individual staff members to work with their wellbeing and their anxiety of coming back into the workplace, and don't get too overwhelmed by the amount of work in front of them, but they actually actively put a plan in place so that we look after our staff as we work through the next number of months. And I think that's a really important point because of everyone's mindset everyone's mindset won't be 100% as we come back into our normal jobs. And so that means that our thinking is not necessarily where it needs to be. And when you take shortcuts, etc., that's when the risk of hurt and injury occurs. And so this is why we're driving this throughout the organisation, to make sure that people are not feeling pressured to actually get stuff done and take corners.
Yeah, great point. Thank you very much for adding that, David. Right, I'll move to the recommendation, which is that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Rob. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, so we'll move to item 8 of the pack, and that's the risk management report on page 29. Heather, are you with us?
Good morning, it's Michelle here. Sorry, Heather has resigned from council, and she has moved to Tauranga City, just touching on what Dan said before about people moving roles and finding good qualified staff that can do the work that we need to get done. So you have me today. Apologies.
No need to apologise.
Hopefully I can do a good job. Probably just the highlights for me, obviously COVID-19. So we've noted in the report that the IMT is still operating. So this has obviously been stood up because of level 4 and 3, and now we're operating at level 2. The team have done really well in this space. Obviously, Delta has shifted the goalposts somewhat. So we have had more discussions around things like mandatory mask wearing. David might like to add some more about that, but I'll just get through my highlights first. The other is to just note that the long-term plan has been discussed in the context of Strategic Risk 2 at a workshop, and that went into some more detail about things like our availability of resources, which links into the discussion about recruitment as well, but also resources externally for the projects that we need to get done. I think the COVID lockdown is only going to highlight those pressures more, particularly since we've got Auckland at level 4 for a record period of time at the moment. And the only other point that I wanted to note is that we are looking to do an exercise with the committee on a review of the strategic risks. COVID has put a bit of a delay on that, but we're hoping to do a session with the committee at your November workshop to have a look at the risks that we've got and talk about whether these are all still hitting the spot in terms of what we should be monitoring as part of this committee. Happy to take any questions, Kieran.
Okay, just before I open it up to any questions, was there anything you wanted to add, David?
Yes, just really make the point that from an IMT perspective, we are following Ministry of Health guidelines with regard to how we provide guidance to the organisation, and that means that our workers can work at home. We prefer them to do so still, and so there are some people that are struggling working from home, and so we've allowed certain people to go back to the workplace. And I'm talking about office space workers to the workplace if that helps them cope, but we're keeping those numbers quite small. So we're obviously in Delta level 2, and we're waiting for new guidance to enable our workers to go back into the office space. We do have our customer facing staff obviously working, and they are following all the Ministry of Health guidelines around mask wearing and sanitizing and ensuring that our members of the public sign in and wear a mask when they come to public facilities. We did run a program, and this was an initiative Michelle followed up, and last Friday we actually had a webinar for all our people leaders and front-facing staff from an expert in dealing with difficult situations, so conflict resolution. And one of the things that we're really focused on is making sure that our staff keep safe and don't put themselves in front of someone who doesn't want to wear a mask or doesn't want to sign in. So we've been quite proactive to engage with security guards on those facilities that we think that there might be a risk of some sort of confrontation, but we've been very clear with staff to understand the scope of their responsibilities in terms of education. And that webinar training, all the feedback we got was really good. It hit the spot and sort of provided staff with some tools in terms of managing difficult conversations and, just asking people to help us keep our community safe. So that was well received.
Thanks for that, David. Right, Councillor Mark, you've got a question?
I do. In fact, I have two. One of them's more for you, Chair Kieran. I was wondering if it might be appropriate. I'm just looking at point 15 about the Waiora Waikato Matariki Award, and I wonder if this committee might pass on their congratulations to Civil Defence for that award, because having watched how hard they worked, particularly in COVID-1 and now in COVID-2, I think it'd be nice to give them a bit of a pat on the back from this level.
Yes, good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. And look, question two, I'm looking at the strategic risks and listening to David and Mish in particular, talking about what a perfect storm it can be for the growth community, with the lack of materials and strategic growth risk number 5 is growth. Do we have any early indication from the development community that they are losing confidence, or how they are feeling in what we call it Delta 2/4 at this point? Any early signals?
Probably appropriate if Chris is on the line to, or Blair.
Something for Blair, if you could speak to that.
These people pop up and magically it's awesome.
Yeah, look, I think there's two lenses to that. Good morning, everyone. Councillor Mark, there is what it means for council in terms of our construction contracts. And if Chris is on the line, I think Chris would be better to speak to that. I think there is then the second side, which is what does it mean for residential commercial construction, of which we are the Building Consent Authority for. And I think Corey is on the line here, and I know Corey has certainly been seeing some impacts, and certainly in it comes to things such as materials and changed materials being swapped out at last minute and those sort of elements of risk. So Corey, are you still here, Corey? He might have jumped off.
He's here.
No, there he is.
Right, yeah, good morning, councillors. Sorry, what was the question, councillor?
The question was more, are you seeing any early indications of a lack of confidence in the development sector at this point that we need to just be aware of as time goes on?
Yeah, not so much lack of confidence, but certainly the sector is struggling, I think, as Blair just briefly mentioned. We're seeing a lot of alternative construction programs and methods, if you like, being applied and being implemented in response to shortage and resourcing, which I think has already been mentioned, one of our challenges as an organisation, but also the challenge in material supply. So not so much confidence in the sector by large, or in the processes of the sector, but more around the sector itself and obtaining the necessary resources to be able to carry out their project. So it's requiring, I guess, the sector to just look differently at how we're going about it, and I guess that's going to challenge us in a positive way around innovation, process change, and trying to be more adaptive to what it is that the sector needs at any one time.
So it hasn't slowed down the consenting demand at this point?
It's really too early to say. At this point in time, we've obviously had COVID over the last few weeks, so trends are hard to follow with such a short modelling period. But certainly that's something we're really conscious of. It's something that we're talking a lot to our industry and our partners, just to understand what's your forward-looking programs. Certainly for the housing companies and the bigger operations and organisations, they've got those supply chains and gangs, if you like, already in place and ready to roll. These are things that are planned over a number of years. So generally they're the projects that continue. But certainly we're conscious of it, and we're staying in touch with the industry by large.
Cool, thank you. And Blair, I guess more to you and Chris, we've got some pretty massive capital program on the way. Is our budget still on point for the, there's some huge price increases, aren't there? So Chris, that might be yours. You're still happy with what we've budgeted for in the LTPs and in your plans?
Yeah, I think as outlined in the strategic risk 7 report, we are seeing pressure on cost escalation at the moment. So again, it hasn't really been realised, but it is a significant risk at the moment, particularly in terms of as we move forward, depending on what happens further in that space. We've made assumptions in our LTP in terms of cost escalation and inflation assessments. If cost escalation goes faster than what those assessments are, it will likely put our budget allocations under pressure to deliver on the program. But that's a risk which we're actively monitoring. But it hasn't really been realised yet. A lot of our existing projects, which we've got underway and are current contractual commitments, they're still rolling, and they've got their supply chains in place. Again, as similar to what been noted by Blair and Corey, we are seeing supply chain pressures across the board, and resources both for materials and skilled staff are challenging in the construction space. But to date, it's a risk element rather than something that we've really seen realised to date.
Thanks. If I can just add, Mark, two comments. One is just on the risk side. The risk is as supply chain pressures come on, particularly in the building side of things, for Corey's team being aware of products being potentially substituted for other products, and what does that mean in terms of consents and our monitoring role. So Corey and his team are very aware of that, and so what we don't want is a future potential risk down the track where products have been substituted or shortcuts have been taken because products aren't available, so builders wish to do other things out of sequence. So and Corey, if there's any questions, Corey can elaborate on that. The second thing is, I think it's simply too early to say if there's any impact on future demand in terms of the growth for the city. I mean, we've certainly got still very large levels of consents in the system being processed. Obviously, things in the last few weeks have just quietened, but we're still significantly higher than last year, and we've got a large backlog we're working through. So I think it's really too early to say. The fundamentals are still very strong for our community, but the short-term impacts, I guess COVID will tell us more in the coming weeks and months as we sort of see it play through.
Thank you. And if I could push one more out, Chair Kieran, is it something that we should be considering in our strategic risk register, and that is our dependence on external funding from the government? And I'm thinking in particular NZTA Waka Kotahi, where we're putting a lot of stock in a lot of words that politicians are saying regards mode shift, for example, and then we just can't seem to realise that funding. Is that one of those risks that we need to keep an eye on or to monitor, or is it just not worth? Is it just part of the game? I'm not sure.
So I wonder whether Mish or David want to take that. Presumably that may well be part of the SLT review of.
Yeah, it will, but we also try and take ensure that we can capture that. We've got strategic risk 2, which is a financial shock, which doesn't really lend itself to what you're saying, Councillor Mark, but certainly those risks and assumptions for the long-term plan, which we talked about in the workshop most recently, are things that we want to give elected members more visibility of as we sort of get to meet on a quarterly basis. And that's something we talked about in the workshop that we'll bring to this committee. So whether it's a strategic risk, captures a strategic risk, or just the LTP assumptions as we bring into the risk committee, there'll certainly be the visibility.
One of the things, Mark, that I'm really keen for us to do is the supply side and demand side risk on both sides. Funding, contractor delivery, the whole thing. I'm doing I've got a list of mechanical changes I want to get council to consider. One of them is from the cost side is a pricing and procurement strategy that's endorsed at a council level in terms about all the different techniques we can use. Almost like a partner document to our treasury policy when we do interest rate hedges and so forth. Try to manage that side. Part of that is the extent of flexibility we give to the organisation to breathe in and breathe out, and to substitute small things. There's medium and large things probably come to council. So there's a whole lot of tools and techniques we need to put in place. And one of the things that's happening at the moment, we bring every little thing to council if it's different, because it's outside the mandate to the chief executive. There's probably a line we need to draw in terms of how we want to manage that as well. So I think it's a really good point. And a lot of COVID's probably changed the risk profile of likelihood for a number of our risks, David. And I think I don't necessarily mean the lockdown, but I mean in general, it's impacted on that. So cost inflation, our contractors' resilience, NZTA or government departments' ability to actually stimulate the economy and how much money they really do have, their debt limits and all that sort of stuff, all has a real consequential impact on our profile. The impact's probably the same, but the likelihood is probably greater now, Mark. So your point is well made, but I think we need to stretch your point across all of our risks and reassess them all because of what you've raised. Yeah,
I thought it might be a long bow bringing it into strategic risk, but thank you.
I think you're right. No, right place, totally right place. I'm just saying there's other risks we need to address and consider that across all of them. That's what the point I'm trying to make.
Capai. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for that, Councillor Mark. I don't see any other virtual hands up there, but I've got a couple of questions on the report. First of all, great to see that we're going to have some ongoing reporting on CCO risks that might impact council. I just wondered, how much do we share in the way of risk resources, whether that be expertise or templates? How much do we support and assist CCOs in that process of managing their risk? David or Mish, are you able to answer that?
I'll start off, and then Mish, you can tell me if I'm right or not. But the last workshop we brought CCOs after many workshop promises to bring CCOs, right, Kieran? So that was the first time we really got them in a long time to talk to this committee. It's from there that we're starting to have further conversations, and we need to get alongside them to make sure that we have assurance that they have the right processes and practices in place to identify and mitigate or eliminate their risks. So,
and rather than them wasting resource on something that we've already developed, it just 100%. Seems to make sense to share that knowledge.
Yeah, so we're expanding our conversations with their audit and risk committees if they have them, or their risk leads, and so we'll leverage as much information that we have or tools that we have to help them be at the standard that we expect them to be at.
Great, thank you. Hey, and the only other question I had on the report was at page 52. It talks about at the top there, it talks about a risk governance group being established to determine next steps. Now, is that just in relation to specifically managing security risk, or is that a more general risk governance group?
That's specifically in relation to security risks. So trying to build our culture in the organisation to manage security risks. Probably a little bit, I guess, following in the footsteps of the health and safety governance structure. So understanding what our risks are and having some direction in that space. So that's something that we're looking at.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Look, if there aren't any other questions, I'll move to the recommendation on page 29 that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Mark. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. So we'll move now to the PwC internal audit update on page 62. So Matt and Aaron, I can see Aaron there. Is Matt with us today?
No, he's got another engagement, so he sends his apologies.
You're on mute, Kieran.
Sorry, I've just got some goings on in the background, so I didn't want you all to have to deal with that background noise. But look, Aaron, I'll hand over to you, take the report as read, but was there anything you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, just obviously we've got a significant piece of work in relation to cybersecurity that we've just kicked off. And I just want to highlight, like, progress has been slow due to obviously COVID-19 and the pressures on Hamilton City staff and priorities, but we are progressing that. And yeah, I guess that's the key thing. There's not much to add apart from that.
And even though Aaron looks like he's in the dark, we are open books to you all the time, aren't we, Aaron?
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. Look, before I open it up to general questions, Aaron, can you tell me where you're at with the planning process for next year?
Yep. For next year, we are setting up a session with the senior leadership team to discuss revising the internal audit plan for this year and a 3-year plan going forward.
Great. And apart from meeting with SLT, what's the general process? What I'm getting at, is that a risk-based process?
Yes, of course. We take obviously the strategic risks and use that as a base and have discussions with the SLT and all the obviously general managers to understand what the key risks for organisations are in the foreseeable future, and that's absolutely the basis for our plan.
On top of that, Aaron, it's a deep dive into the LTP from a risk perspective, right? And just for us to understand in terms of the changes that are going on in the organisation over the next 3 to 5 years, where do we need to get give the committee most assurance? So we'll just build that up from a senior leadership perspective first, and then bring to the committee in a draft form for further discussion.
Great, thank you. Councillor Rob, you've got a question.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Aaron. Just one quick question on the cyber security scope of work. Can you confirm that study is going to include how well we are resourced and our timeliness to deal with cyber security? And the reason I asked that question is quite clearly there's a lot of things happening in that space around the world at the moment. And I guess from a risk point of view, we're pretty keen on the current stuff rather than the historical.
Yeah, well, definitely. The focus of it is very sort of forward-looking. We're taking the updated strategic cybersecurity strategy, and we're sort of stress testing that and having a look at are you addressing the credible threats to the organisation, your current credible threats, and obviously what controls the organisation currently has in place and what any gaps are in order to prioritise any sort of work plan or update the strategic plan to make sure it's robust to go forward.
Okay, and so will you then identify whether we need further investment or further staff in order to ensure that we're ahead of the game? Well, as ahead of the game as we possibly can be.
Yeah, we'll definitely highlight areas where you need to invest further, and obviously, and make sure that you're prioritising the correct things. The most important things to go forward. In terms of staffing, it's not a specific focus of this piece of work, but obviously it will sort of fall out a bit in terms of in terms of the gaps and the amount of work that's needed.
Yeah, if I can add to that, Councillor Rob, Murray will talk later in the meeting about cybersecurity, but one of the things around resourcing, or should we say investment, is not only buying new stuff, but reorganising what we currently have, and there's a cost to that, and reorganising to fewer entry points for some sort of cybersecurity, and improving our security posture around architecture is a key thing that I know that Murray is looking at. So that'll come out of today's meeting and beyond.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Bruce, you've got a question.
Just a short one, probably not inappropriate given the week we're in. The staff scoping the Maori responsiveness plan, that's something which is just a hiccup from lockdown, and there's no reason that's slowed down. It might be a question for the management rather than you, Aaron.
I can probably jump in there if that's okay. Thanks for the question, Bruce. Yeah, so we met with PwC, with Aaron and Wayne Tainui a while ago, and they've given us a proposal for a piece of work. I think it probably goes a bit beyond just the internal audit kind of scope in terms of are we fulfilling our obligations under the treaty, and so we're looking at including that work as part of our Hepo Manawa Ora strategy. So it's a slightly bigger scope of work. We're just sort of working through that now in terms of whether we can sort of fit that in under the budget of our strategy budget, and then just refining kind of what the actual scope of that looks like. But that is progressing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Any other questions for Aaron? No. Look, I'll move that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Rob. All of those in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Right, so let's move now to item 9 of the pack, page 62. Morva, are you with us? I saw that she was on the screen before. Hopefully, yeah, and she is there. There we go.
Hi. Unclick.
So the HCC internal audit report. Do you want to take us through just the very brief key highlights there?
So basically, I'm just about to start a significant piece of work on the capitalisation of assets. And that's just about to kick off. So that's my main comment.
Okay, and just before I open it up for questions, it wasn't clear where the contract management review is at. You've outlined what it's to cover, but where is it in the process?
That's still being done, but it's just slightly being pushed by other internal work I'm doing as well. So it's being managed as part of my work plan.
So it's in the field work stage?
Yes, it's really still at the beginning, but it's just keeps getting bumped a wee bit, but it will be done at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A couple of quick questions, Morva. One around the contract management. I raised earlier in the meeting a concern about external contractors and the notifiable events that seemed high in proportion to internal notifiable events. Will you be including that in as part of your audit as to how, under that, managing correctly those contracts to include the health and safety aspect of the contract?
Yes, I will be.
Yep, thank you. And my second question is on capitalisation of assets, which is a hardy annual for me. Is this to look at our ongoing issues around how quickly the organisation is able to move work in progress into assets that are then operating and depreciated?
That's correct, it is.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay. All right, so I take it that that's a matter of reviewing what we put in place, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, and seeing what can be enhanced to improve that going forward.
Yes, it's a number of groups are actually doing things at the moment. So it's working with them. But yes, you're right. It is actually taking what was done a number of years ago and seeing what's working, what's not working, and coming up with some recommendations.
And will you get some feedback from Audit New Zealand in terms of the concerns and the matters that they raise each year, insofar as that the speed at which the WIP is converted to assets?
Yes, I've gone back and looked at all those recommendations, and so I'm including everything in this project.
Okay.
Not just yeah.
Okay. Are Audit New Zealand able to give us some help in terms of what they're seeing in other councils? Because this is something that we seem to have, in the years I've been around the table, we seem to have struggled with, in terms of, you know, the timeliness of being able to do this.
I'll certainly have a discussion with Audit New Zealand while they're on site. That's a good idea, and to see who's got a better process in place. But yes, it's a good idea.
Thank you, Chair.
And no doubt Tracy would have liked to have been able to respond to that, but she's away sick, I understand, today.
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay. Are there any other questions on that report? Excuse me. Okay, look, I'll move to the recommendation on page 64, which is that the committee receive the report. I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, so we'll move. Thank you for that, Morva, but I think you're up for the next item 2, which is item 11, Organisation Improvement Register on page 66. Mm-hmm. Are there any key points you would like to highlight?
Basically, this report is actually capturing all the recommendations from a number of audits, and we actually have had a draft report back from NZTA on the audit they did, and so if you're interested in discussing that, but we've yet to see the outcome of the latest management report from Audit New Zealand, so I haven't got anything to add to that at this stage.
Okay, so the Waka Kotahi report is not finalised yet. We haven't seen the report, so unless there's any red flags in the draft, I propose that we'll come to that when we see the report, the final report.
Cool.
Okay, so I've got 2 questions there. I'll go to Councillor Rob first.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that Waka Kotahi report, I was quite keen to know what they actually did audit, but I assume I'm happy to wait until the report comes to us. And that was my second part of the question. Does that report come to this committee? I've not ever seen a Waka Kotahi audit report in the past. So is it something new?
No. Is Eva Lisa still available?
She's on mute. There we go.
Right. Cool.
So Councillor Rob, Waka Kotahi do an audit through our organisation on our investment and spend, and those results come through. I'm unsure how we report that through the Strategic Risk and Audit Committee, but it's something that I will look into and work with Morva to make sure that the outcomes of that report have come through, so that as elected members in this committee, you're fully aware of what that report indicates for us.
Thank you. And my second question, Morva, was around what are the 3 recommendations from Audit New Zealand on their review around managing conflicts of interest regarding involving management rather than elected members. I I couldn't find those 3 recommendations in the report.
I think there's a report from Mish's area.
Yeah, I think that's in a separate paper. So perhaps
is it?
Yes,
it could be dealt with there
in the separate paper.
Is that further on? Is it in the?
Yes.
Okay.
It
All right.
is.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll withdraw the question.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bruce, you've got a question there?
Look, a comment just to open up, firstly, which just following from Rob, I would actually recommend that we do see at least the results of the Waka Kotahi report. Kieran, my view is that the value of what we have been reported here, but it's also for all committees, is actually all these reports are external. They give us a sense of assurance about what management are doing. So either if there's a way that is appropriate to come to us, I would appreciate the chance to see the high-level summary of what it's doing. The only other point more I had, which is totally for clarification, which I think was paragraph 7 about the 8 recommendations were outstanding with that phrase pending the final management report. I presume we feel we've dealt with it. We're just waiting on the auditors to say that we have cleared them.
I couldn't say whether we've cleared them or not, but until the report has, until council has received the report, I can't comment. I'm sorry. So they are outstanding from last year, and there wasn't an interim audit. Sometimes items are cleared there, but so it was the LTP this year.
I understand that. Thank you.
And all I can add, Bruce, is from my general conversations with Tracy throughout the audit, and it's just a shame she wasn't able to join us today, that there are no red flags with regards to clearing those recommendations.
Yes, no, that's great.
Okay, look, I just got one question, and that's at paragraph 13, which effectively outlines the outstanding recommendations. And there are 2 recommendations that are now overdue. Can you just give me a bit of background as to what is the hold up there and what's the likely clearance date for those now?
Okay, the first one on data governance, that will be, work has started, and I think Murray Hickey can is addressing that. So that piece of work won't be finished by his team until December. And the Peace Soda assessment is in progress and will be done before the next meeting.
Okay, and so I'm just interested to know, did we get the recommendation, due date? Did we get that wrong, or what caused the 6-month delay in the data governance?
Right, no, that was the due date in the PwC report, not my due date. So that was what was agreed at the time between the business and PwC. So
yeah, and the answer is going to be workload.
Yes,
it's going to be workload and needing to prioritise, which we've been working through. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's there's always that tension, isn't there, of workload? But we shouldn't forget that we are just focusing on those high risk areas, and so one would expect that they would take the higher priority. But there is, as we saw in the workshop, there's a bigger work stream behind that, particularly that data governance item. It's a really important work stream.
That's right.
Okay, if there aren't any further questions on that report, I'll move that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mayor Paula. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, Narelle, just to check in with you, is this all working for you? And you will let me know if I miss any points that you make. Is the hand raising okay? I will highlight if I see anyone dissenting. Are you happy with that?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, no, this is working absolutely fine, and the hand raising is our normal, so that's good.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Karen, can I ask if you're going to have a comfort stop at any time, or do we just do it in our own time?
Sorry, your audio wasn't very clear, but you were asking about a comfort stop. I was going to suggest that we have one at 11. Is that okay with everyone for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So look, I think we could probably do one more paper prior to that. So we'll move to item 12 on the agenda, page 69, and that's the interim audit. So Tracy isn't with us today. Who wants to take us through that? Is that going to be Julie? Who seems like she's walking to her
I'm walking,
desk.
sorry, Kieran. I was walking to where it's quiet. I think David's going to talk about the financial side. But if I just maybe grab everyone for a moment just to give you an update of what's happened with the service performance measures. I talked at the last workshop that we had an issue with the water's response and resolution time service performance measure. We've been working hard with audit and they've been fantastic. And we've gone back to DIA. DIA have said there was no standard methodology for calculating those two measures, and it was up to councils to decide how to do that. And so what we did, of course, is we had a way of calculating it. Then we changed it mid-year, which is not ideal, but there were good reasons for doing that to make it clearer about what time was actually being included in those measures. And so we have reported that as a change in methodology. Audit originally said if you've changed it, one of them must have been wrong. They now agree that it is just a change in methodology. And so there will be no emphasis on that or qualification related to the service performance measures.
That's a fabulous result. Well done to you and the audit team for quite a collaborative approach on that more technical issue. So well done. Look,
I can add to that, Kieran, if you want me to just talk a bit about from a finance side, we have had no red flags been raised by audit to us. So we're feeling really comfortable about the audit. The area of discomfort would be around being able to, obviously today we weren't able to bring the annual report to committee and for discussion, and there's a bit of an extension in terms of timeframes for that to be brought through. We're currently, our best hope is to have something in front of committee to recommend to full council to adopt the annual report on the 29th of this month, so 29th of September. We do have a couple of alternate plans, but we note that we want to have this committee review, feel comfortable, feel assured, and then recommend to full council for adoption of the annual report or sign off of the annual report before Richard Briggs, our leaves the organisation, because it's really appropriate that he gets to sign those letters. So in conversations with Audit New Zealand, they can talk to it in a few sets, but they've had resource related issues that haven't been, I have to say the Hamilton team have been wonderful and we have a great relationship with them, but unfortunately their resources get stolen on central government related projects, which has caused a delay in what we are getting done. But so I'm sure you'll have some questions of Nordia about that, but that's where we stand at the moment.
So I wonder, before I open it up for general questions, I wonder whether is it Nordia or Clarence? I can't see either
Nordia's
on
here.
screen.
Nordia's here.
Yet. Nordia. I wonder if you might give us a general update of where we're at with the audit and the next steps. I see you're there, but you're on mute, Nordia. Maybe he's not there. Julie, would you feel comfortable, or David, to give us an update on what still needs to be done now that that service performance measurement issue has been dealt with?
I can give you a highlight update. As I know the finance team has been, there's a little bit more work to do around the verification of some of our assets. And so this has been a little bit difficult during COVID of being able to actually allow audit to be able to verify the existence of some assets. So they're just working through that. My understanding that is really the only last outstanding item that we're working through. And the teams incorporated, I think it was heritage revaluation that still had to go in. I understand that's been now done, and are just doing some final checks through those numbers, and we're hoping to get all of that sort of signed off, I think, by the end of this week, so that then we can get the document produced, updated, and then checked again, ready to go to the committee.
Yeah. Okay.
And
great. Yeah. And I wonder whether somebody might text Nordia to ask him to join us. In the meantime, I'll just quickly go through the other two options. There we go. No,
sorry, okay, I made it in. Clarence, I think he's still trying to dial in there to be allowed in, but I can take it from here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, look, I was just asking for a bit of an update on where we're at with the audit process now that we've cleared that issue around the service performance measurement. So what still needs to be done in the audit?
We're just working through the revaluations. We've got the information, the last bit of our samples of the additions for the RIP. We're just busy verifying that to get that information. And as Julie mentioned earlier, that is our last major part of work left. What we're also just waiting is, from a sector point of view, is a technical opinion about the recognition for the Wakakatai funding. Oh, not sorry, for the Free Waters Reform funding. There was some funding received up to date for certain work programs, whatever, just to make sure that we're consistent throughout the sector, to recognize that, because it is quite a material amount. It's about 20 million for Hamilton City Council. You've recognized, I think, 9 million as income in advance, which we as a team agree with it. We just want to get confirmation from our technical team that everybody is treating it the same way, the recognition criteria for that. So that is just waiting for that. We're expecting by the end of the week to get that feedback from our technical sector teams. So that is, we just want to work through that, and then we just going through our final review processes. As we mentioned, we're trying to aim to get the 29th clearance, so we can adopt, get a draft annual report when that's tabled on the 29th to get clearance end of the month. But as David mentioned before, there is a plan B in place. We've worked with management, at least if we don't get that information, there is a plan B.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. So, yeah, so it seems like we're working towards the an extraordinary meeting of this committee on the 29th to then recommend the annual report through to council for adoption on the 30th. And so the other two options would be an extraordinary committee meeting on the 1st of October going through to council on the 5th, or a committee meeting on the 7th and the adoption by the council on the 12th, all of which are prior to Richard leaving so that he can sign off that annual report. But it seems what I'm hearing today is that we should be well on track for that plan 1A. So look, but I wonder whether we might be able to get some placeholders sent out into our diaries, because I'm just not sure what time you're planning on having those meetings. It would be good to have some placeholders in our diaries, just so that we can make those extraordinary meetings work. So look, I think I've got a message there on quorum. Yeah, Paula has just had to pop out to take another meeting, but I see we now have Councillor Angela joining us, so welcome. Your timing is perfect, and I think we're fine for quorum. Right, so are there any questions on this paper or of the external auditors before we move to a brief break? No? Okay, look, I'll move to the recommendation, which is on page 69 of the pack. Now, the recommendation is that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Bruce. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Right. Okay, look, we'll have a brief 5-minute break and then we'll get back into it. And then we'll have another break just prior to noon while others are joining us. So I'll see you back here at 11:10.
Your timing's perfect, Angela.
I see that.
Right, it's just gone 10 past. I will just hold off for a minute or two because I see a few videos aren't back on, so I'm assuming we don't actually have a quorum yet. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I can actually only see 3 committee members on video at this stage. I might just give it another minute or two for Councillor Mark or Councillor Angela.
Back live.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's get started again. So we're now on to item 13 of the agenda, and that's the external audit of the long-term plan. Julie, did you want to kick off with that, and then I'll hand over to Clarence?
Thank you. Yes. Elected members, you'll remember we adopted our long-term plan back in June 2021. And as part of that provide an audit opinion that's included in the long-term plan. This report is the letter that accompanies that audit opinion. So because of the time pressures, we don't always have the letter at the same time we have the audit opinion. So this is just bringing that to you. There was nothing new in the letter that we didn't know about. So they had mentioned 3 emphases of matter in our audit opinion, which was the water reform, cost savings, and infrastructure asset condition information, and staff had actions in place to address those. They also put 2 recommendations in the letter. One was about making sure we revise our cost and revenue forecasts once we've received confirmation of the Waka Katoa budgets, and that's in play at the moment. And the second was about implementing monitoring and reporting on the savings plan. And Murray, where the savings plan sits with now, as head of transformation, will report back to council on a 6-monthly basis on that report to the Finance Committee.
Thanks, Julie. That was a great summary. Clarence, was there anything, or Nordea, is there anything you would like to add?
Good morning, Madam Chair and everybody else. No, I think that was a really good summary of the management report. As Julie said, there's nothing new in the report. It's pretty much the unmodified audit opinion with the 3 emphases of matters, just drawing readers' attention to the undisclosure. Overall, I think is a really good result. And then the recommendations, the monitoring of the reporting for the savings plan, I think is really important. The revising the financial forecast. Actually, this morning we just got confirmation that Waka Katoa actually increased the funding to Hamilton City. So our recommendation there's well, sort of not relevant anymore, but that's the benefit of timing. But yeah, very good summary. Thanks, Julie.
Oh, we're getting lots of good news this morning. That's great. Councillor Rob, I see you've got a question there.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. 2 questions. One is on the cost savings and the LTP. And I see that we're going to get the reports coming through finance. I take it, and this is a question more to management, I take it that some work is being done in the anticipation of the client briefing, which I know has been deferred out because of COVID, as to how that reporting is going to be done, in the sense that there's an expectation, I think, from elected members that the reporting was going to be better going forward than what it has been for the last long-term plan. Can somebody just comment on that?
Yeah, I can. So yes, the COVID has slowed us down a little with regard to the briefing, but there's a lot of work we're doing behind the scenes to actually prepare more detailed plans behind each cost-saving category, with a focus on cost optimization, if you like, rather than just cutting costs. We're conscious of the vacancy factor being something that has been achieved in the last couple of years, but not in these environments. So we need to actually recut the cloth and make sure that we can deliver the committee or elected members confidence and assurance that the cost savings that we have in the long-term plan, what the underlying initiatives are. And so you'll see that the reporting of those cost savings will be more detailed, and that should give you more assurance.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, David. And my second question and last question is on that third matter, which hasn't been considered in any detail in the report, and that's the infrastructure asset condition. And I just, again, to management, what needs to be done to address this, and what sort of reporting is envisaged going forward, so that elected members have got some oversight on the matters that were raised in the audit by Audit New Zealand on asset condition.
I'll just check, Sean, did you want to answer this, or would you like me to? Okay, so I'll answer first, and then Sean can add anything.
Thanks, Julie.
So as part of our asset strategy team, they are investing a lot of work in looking at our asset conditions and trying to get improved data on that. As part of when we do our asset management plans, they're prepared by staff based on the data that we have, and then they're peer reviewed independently. So we've got a good process in place to making sure that we're getting good information there. Part of the process that we undertake is an assessment of how good we think the quality of our data is. And it's a self-assessment. And so for this long-term plan, and I can't remember which era it was, but one of our teams for rated our self-assessment reasonably low in terms of the quality of or the assurance of that data we have. And so Paul Gower and his team, who are the asset management team, are working hard to make sure that we address that over the next few years, and we continue to improve our asset management planning processes. Did Audit want to add anything to that, if I've missed anything?
No, again, through you, Madam Chair, that's pretty much what we've agreed with them. The going forward is getting. It's not that we were worried about. It's just that they don't have the information. It's just not in the asset management plans, and it's the improvement of the overall quality of how it's captured, and that was the recommendation. And because it is on the wastewater and on the water treatment plants, where you would think because it is such a big infrastructure asset, that it's very important to improve the quality of the information in your asset management plans.
Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, so we do, as sort of Julie alluded to, we've got an asset data improvement program, which is underway, and it's sort of been done in 3 phases. The first phase being the water's assets. So it's essentially getting the asset information on those assets into our asset management system, IPS, and that would address the issues that have been flagged by Audit New Zealand.
Will we get some reporting back in terms of what progress has been achieved in doing this, say between now and the next annual audit?
Yes, I'll have to check with Paul offline in terms of what where we'd sort of lined up to report that to. I wasn't sure if it was through this committee or if it was through infrastructure operations, but yep, certainly we'll get reporting back in some form.
Thank you, Chair.
It may well be that it is through the infrastructure committee rather than this, given ordinarily if it was a recommendation coming out of the review, we would get that visibility over it, but given it's a emphasis of matter rather than coming through on the recommendations, it may well not come through this committee. Okay, are there any other questions on that report? No. Look, I'll move that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Rob. All of those in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, so that brings us now to item 14 on the agenda, and that relates to conflicts of interest update on page 86.
Thanks, Karen.
Right.
Excuse
gonna
me.
take us through that, Mish?
I am. So some of the committee members may recall in probably about February, March this year, we had the OIG come and see us to do an exercise in assessing conflicts of interest, and they did that with 4 different councils. We received a letter specific to Hamilton City Council outlining their views on our management of conflict of interest, and they also published an article that talked about their findings in general across the 4 councils that they interviewed. We don't actually know who the other 4 councils are. And I guess I'd start by saying that overall, the response that we had from OIG was fairly positive, but it's also really helpful to have someone external look at our processes and identify areas where we can make some improvement. And the team has been looking at this and what we can do in this space. So we've got a team that involves HR, our procurement team, my team from a legal and a policy perspective, to look at this. And we really think there's probably some things that we will get done relatively quickly, and that's around the review of the policy and the form, which is part of the feedback that we had from OIG. One of the slightly larger pieces of work is going to be looking at how we get some better alignment on conflict of interest practices across the organisation, and we're looking to complete a gap analysis in that space. And I guess another conversation that we need to have is the checks and balances when it comes to the oversight by governance and senior management of our conflict of interest management. And we are also looking at our training and internal guidance resources. So you may recall that we've recently completed training for 260 staff in conflict of interest and fraud and bribery. In an ideal world, we would roll that out to the whole organisation, and that's what we're looking at doing. Standing up some work on Cornerstone, which is a really good asset, similar to work that I've done in the privacy space to make sure that everyone has access to that, and then doing some more targeted training with some of the more high-risk areas of the business. That's a very, very quick overview of what we're doing. We anticipate being able to bring the conflict of interest policy back to the committee in November and providing a more fulsome update in March of work that we've completed. So, Kieran, I'm very happy to take questions.
Thanks, that was a really good overview, Mish. I guess we need to be aware as a committee that some of these recommendations directly touch on this committee, and that's around the checks and balances and how do we ensure as a committee that the governance of this organisation receives assurance over how it manages its conflicts of interest. And I think as a committee, we've always been aware of conflicts of interest when it comes to governors of the organisation, but the committee hasn't so much been across the management of conflicts at levels throughout the organisation, and that's what this review looked at. So it's it is useful information to improve the processes, so yeah, we look forward to receiving that policy. Sorry, did you say in November?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. But also some recommendations as to how we might, as a committee, fulfil some of those other recommendations which touch on, our terms of reference or work plan of this committee to ensure that, we are fulfilling that side of terms of reference. Right, I see Bruce has got a hand up there.
Yeah, look, the comment in question, Kieran, look, very grateful for the report, Mish, and I'm glad that we're treating it seriously. I have been in an organisation where this has tripped us up, particularly when the public perceive that we're not managing staff conflicts appropriately. It leads to all sorts of public perception problems and being haunted by the media. So I think that's a very timely shot across our bows, if I can put it that way. Mish, is there any sense, and I don't want to know who or anything like that, but any sense of how common, say in the course of a year, the issue of staff conflicts is real? As in, we have a matter to deal with, to manage with in terms of our policies. Can you give us, it's characterising the size of the problem for us?
In the time that I've been here, I haven't had any issues brought to my attention. So I'm not saying that we don't have them, but I wouldn't say that it's significant. I would probably need to have, I don't know, Dan, if you've got any comments. I don't think I've got Igor on the line. He's head of procurement at the moment, so he would also have a sense as well, but I can certainly follow up on that for you. My sense is that it's not, I mean, conflict or perceived conflict by staff is kind of unavoidable to come across in any organisation, but I don't get a sense that it's a big concern for us. Dan or David, I don't know if you have any other comments on that.
I guess the key thing is nothing's been highlighted. So we do have a rigorous process through council, get those reviewed every every staff member to certify that advising of any potential relationship topics that might create a perceived conflict. So we think we're managing it well, but you can never be too sure, right? So always looking, always searching, and I suppose on the other side of it, we do promote the whistleblowing sort of phone number for council to make sure that if anyone sees something and is not quite right, they can just anonymously just ring that number and or go to the manager or whoever the situation might be appropriate.
You don't have to come back to me, Mish. I don't need to know that at the moment, but probably a question I might well ask when you come with the policy in November. So any indication of the extent of which this might be in the organisation would just be appreciated. Give a contextual understanding, that'd be great.
And
Bruce,
I was just going to invite you, Dan, to add something.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Kieran. Look, Bruce, I can certainly assure you, look, there aren't a large number of conflicts that come to our attention throughout the year. What we do is an annual declaration and go out and ensure that any actual or perceived conflicts are updated. And then we also look to review and update the mitigations, working through the people leaders and those people who have declared those. So it is well managed. And look, certainly there's not a lot that come across my desk throughout the year that would cause any concern for the committee.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I see, Igor, you've joined us. Is there anything you'd like to add from a procurement side?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just chime in, just answer the question directly. We do have on occasion, but it's very, very sporadic. I've had one probably in the course of about last 6 months, but they're relatively benign in nature. They haven't been serious, and we've mitigated those appropriately. But yeah, certainly look, the report highlights some tweaks that we can make, and I think those were well received, and we will action those pretty imminently. Certainly the ones that we can, they're low hanging fruit for us, we'll do in the course of the next 2 months.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Okay, if there aren't any further questions, I'll move to the staff recommendation, which is that the committee receives the report, notes the letter received by the Chief Executive in attachment 1, notes that that progress to implement the Auditor General's recommendations will be reported to future committee meetings in the Organisation Improvement Register. Can I have a seconder? I'll move that. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Mark. All of those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, so we'll move now to the compliance reporting update on page 92. Mish, will you take us through that?
Yes. Matters to highlight, we've had no instances reported to us of fraud or corruption and no protected disclosure matters that we need to bring to the committee's attention. We I have been expanding the brief for this particular report. One of the things that I will note in terms of the protected disclosures is that we have the bill that is currently sitting with central government, and we're expecting that once the bill for the new protected disclosures legislation is passed, that we'll be bringing back to you an updated policy, which is within the terms of reference for this committee. I'll also note that Mary Hill, she's a partner at Cooney Lees Morgan. She's been reappointed to the position of our external contact for this, so that if people feel that they need to go outside the organisation to make a protected disclosure, they have the opportunity to do so. One of the other matters that the committee has asked for more information on is compliance around the Privacy Act 2020. I've included in the report the key changes that were made to the legislation, which I won't go over again in any detail. The privacy principles that we have to abide by remain the same. Essentially, the biggest changes are around notification of serious privacy breaches, both to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner and also in some circumstances to the individuals who have been affected. The Privacy Commissioner has also been afforded more powers in terms of requiring compliance and direction of agencies who have breached privacy, so they essentially have a larger stick in which to beat people with. Probably the biggest piece of work that we've done, the two biggest pieces of work, are a review of our current privacy statement. So that's on our website to make sure that we are complying as best as we can, and we think that it's fairly robust. Tauranga City Council has recently asked us if they could borrow our policy as a basis for their own, which is, I think, flattery is the most, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery or something like that. So that was quite heartening to see. And the other piece that we've done recently is training for staff. So making sure that staff have access to training on privacy compliance at any time. We've got this sitting on Cornerstone, and it's an e-learning module. And the other side of that is not just to roll it out to the existing staff in the organisation, but to make sure that it's part of the onboarding process for staff. The module that's available is based on the e-learning modules from the OPC, and at the moment what we have for people as a minimum is doing the Privacy ABC, which is about a 30-minute course, plus our organisation-specific content that we have sitting around that. And in terms of the organisation-specific content, it's saying to them, I am the privacy officer, and if you have any concerns, then I'm the first point of contact, so that if we do have these things come up, and they do come up from time to time, that we can address them appropriately. There are other learning modules that are available from the OPC, and we may look at rolling those out to staff who are in, for example, HR roles. So those are the two biggest areas that we're looking at compliance at the moment. And I think really the education piece is the most important at this moment in time. And I think specifically for customer services, HR staff, and also the teams sitting in IS who have access to quite a lot of personal information, and making sure that that's safe, and trying to tie that into the security piece that obviously sits with IS in terms of our data. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that summary, Mish. Councillor Mark, I see you've got a question there.
Yes, thank you. And I certainly hope this sort of doesn't register as the silliest question of the day, but it may. My question is around corruption, and it's a phrase that gets bandied around, especially on social media: corrupt council, corrupt council, corrupt council. And I've noticed with a lot of phrases like bullying, racism, etc., the bar drops a little bit as to how seriously we have to take it. And I'm just wondering, if someone does accuse the council of corruption on social media, where should I, as a councillor, direct them to? Do we have this information as to what we consider corruption publicly available? Because it's a pretty serious thing to start lobbying around. And obviously, I don't want it to become, I'm thinking out loud a little bit here, but I just don't want it to become like a Lagoima type thing. We spend our staff spends a lot of time chasing corruption allegations. Does that make any sense? I'm trying to find a clear line where it comes from being just a flippant phrase to being taken seriously.
Yeah, that really is a tough one, because social media is a very kind of different beast to perhaps our more formal or transactional relationships that we have with people in the community, where they're paying rates or entering into contracts with us, and people can say quite outlandish things on social media. I guess it's really horses for courses. We do have a complaints page on our website where though, if people have got serious legitimate complaints, they can fill out those forms. I guess, dare I say it, Lance, I'm hopefully not throwing you on it. You can talk to, obviously, the CE if you've got something that's come up as a concern.
Yep.
Funnily enough, the Protected Disclosures Act only actually applies to staff members who have an allegation of serious misconduct, and there's a definition around that as well. So that's not necessarily an avenue that we can use, but obviously Mary Hill is there in that function, and she is independent of council. So there's potential for those kind of avenues to be used as well.
Okay. Yeah, and look, thanks, Chair, for that indulgence. I think I'll bail you up in a corridor next time I see you and just get some clarity on it. That's
and of course, Mark, there's Kieran being the independent chair of this risk committee, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. Okay, appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks. I don't have any other further questions there, but I just had a further question on the Privacy Act compliance. So it sounds like you're doing some good work on educating. So obviously that's the first port of call to ensure that everyone in the organisation, or all those that need to know, what are their obligations under that act, and what do they do if they muck up and there is some sort of breach. And we have the privacy policy as well. What do we do within the organisation to ensure compliance against that policy? How do we ensure that actually, if there is a serious breach, it is notified, that it gets through to probably you, Mish, and is then notified to the Commissioner?
So my team, so it's myself, Tatiana, and Sian, who does a day a week for me. We're well aware of our obligations to report to the Privacy Commissioner, and the Privacy Commissioner has a very helpful tool online that actually steps you through assessing whether or not a breach should be notified to them. They're also very helpful in terms of providing guidance in this space. I think the education piece is really where I need to start with privacy breaches, because raising that awareness in the organisation that that's my role and I'm the person that you need to speak to is really the first step. One of the things that's on my list to do is to improve accessibility to myself online. So, for example, on Velocity, which is our intranet, looking at having a link to say, hey, look, if you want to report a privacy breach, then we can look at, I guess, having more of a process rather than emailing me directly. Some people may wish to do that anonymously. And also having that direct access for the public as well. So there's a specific place rather than having to go through our info at to report privacy breaches. But it is one of those things where, as you raise people's awareness, you might find that we get more reporting. I don't know. But other than that, it's really talking to our high-risk teams about privacy. And talking to them about the principles that we have to adhere to under the legislation. So that's mainly sitting in the IS space. Some of that's sitting with the website because that's where a lot of our information transactions occur, and our customer services team. So yeah, it's really a work in progress, but I think the education piece is kind of the biggest hill that I have to climb at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paula, you have a question?
Mayor Paula, yep.
Sorry, Mayor Paula.
That's fine, don't worry, it's not an issue.
Sorry.
Sorry, because I had to drop out for a couple of urgent phone calls, but just so if I step over something that's already been said, just let me know and I'll catch up on offline. Just in terms of a couple of things around this privacy and reporting, I know Mark was in the middle of an example, but I didn't hear it all. One of the ones that concerned me was the relevancy for things like disclosure of our private dwellings. So we had that issue with Lagoima where, so I'm getting question. With Lagoima where they wanted to know how close we were to community centres. Vis-a-vis, that looks like an okay question to ask. How close are you in your neighbourhood to a community centre that you could represent? So I get that. The question was the granularity. I don't use my home address when I electioneer to tell people I live there for a variety of obvious reasons, given the tensions that we're seeing rising in our communities. And the honest truth is I've been at the end of nasty and slightly threatening, or quite very threatening possibly, communications, right? So my home is my home. So I don't really want, so how do I have any opportunity to protect those kind of things on the basis of a bigger picture? I'm all open. Look in my phone, look in my computer, whatever, look on my Facebook, you can do all that. But I do protect the interests of my family in my own dwelling. So just asking about that, how does that sort of thing sit? And then my second question will be about what's happening with in Australia, Mish, around the social media and defamation. You would have seen that just come up on the news the day before yesterday, perhaps?
Yeah, privacy and official information are uneasy bedfellows, if I can put it that way. There's always going to be a tension between releasing information and protecting the privacy of individuals. Protecting privacy is one of the reasons that we can use to withhold information. I see that I've got Megan and James on the line. Megan is one of our invaluable resources at TW who provides advice in this space for me as well. But one of the hard things about Lagoima is that privacy in that space also has to be balanced against the public interest in knowing information. And the particular example that you've given me, Paula, the response that we still have to run past elected members, but that we're looking at is advising of the suburb that elected members live in, but not actually providing any information that would give someone a chance of being able to find out where personal addresses are, because we're very aware of the fact that you are public figures, but also that people can have a variety of reasons for trying to get in touch with you. Some of them are not so pleasant, and that you do have families that you want to keep secure and somewhat insulated from some of the behaviour that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, I suppose that's the distinction. What is for me and what is for? I mean, everybody knows about this example. I had a guy come to the counter downstairs and the help desk they were all lovely. They were all such lovely people. We were really, really stressed by the fact that this guy would not leave until they told him how many children I had, right? So things like that are really, really overstep the mark. So have access to me by all means through the right channels, but leave my daughters out of it. So, you can imagine I was not very happy about that. Of course, that became a sort of a policeman I was dealt with. But that's the point I make. It's just a fine line between public servants being, exposed publicly. And I think that needs greater debate in New Zealand. I think we should talk with local government New Zealand, because I know they're working on that stuff too. They want us to be more accessible. We want to be more accessible, but we also are experiencing higher amounts of aggression with really contentious issues that raise up from time to time. And it's only a matter of time, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the legislation is getting a bit long in the tooth as well. 1987. It doesn't reflect in any way, shape, or form the environment that we live in. So we can only hope that it makes it up the list of central government's considerations.
And just in terms of the safety around defamation, sorry if you've already covered this, I was listening to the news only a few days ago when the Australian government announced the changes it's making on social media, so that if someone else defames someone on your social media site and you don't control that, you become responsible for that defamation. So that's really difficult for us. That's some learning area I'd like to be picked up, because that means if we're not watching very carefully the comments and some idiot gets on and talks, well, actually, Jacinda unfortunately gets defamed on my page all the time at the moment because of the Three Waters. And I hide it as best I can whenever it comes up, because I don't think that's reasonable. But I can't see it all the time. I'm on this call. I'm not looking at my social media this morning. So, those sort of things are just a screenshot away from disaster. So I'm just wondering what we can think through that.
And that is a really good point. But can I suggest, given that is such new information, that we take that as an action point, perhaps to report in the next compliance report to the committee?
Absolutely.
Are you happy with that?
Yes, Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Look, I am aware of the time, and I want to give committee members just a little comfort break before we move to the Te Reo moment at noon. So first of all, I'll move to the recommendation for item 15, the compliance reporting update, that the committee receives the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mark. All of those in favour? Against? And carried. Now, look, I propose that I won't move to the next item, which is to exclude the public, because I think it would be nice that we actually have this moment in the public forum. Or are you suggesting that we should adjourn the meeting and go to that? What's the proper process there? Can somebody advise me on that?
I'm not sure if it's actually, is it, I suppose logistically, Maxine, is it the same Zoom link? Is it part of this meeting?
It
Yes,
is the same.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Narelle. The only difficulty that we have is that when we go into multiple speakers or singers in our case, it disturbs the audio, and that's a problem. So what I've proposed is that we go to mute and we ask Narelle to play the waiata that we recorded last year, the link that I shared. That doesn't let anybody off the hook, actually, because we'll still be visible, and I'll ask you all to put your camera on, and so we'll be able to see you singing and hold you accountable, but the actual audio will be from last year's, and you'll be singing alone to your office or your home environment. So and I'm pretty comfortable whether that's in public or public excluded.
Maxine, could I suggest that, because Lance is sort of the incoming CEO, we leave his speaker on?
Yeah. Oh, it's on.
Where have you gone, Lance?
Kieran, I would have thought it's probably appropriate to adjourn the meeting, given that it's not part of the agenda, and that but we just stay on this link.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, and thank you very much for organising that, Maxine. And I did wonder how we were going to get over that technical difficulty of everyone having a voice at once. So I think that's a great solution. Look, can I suggest that we can all have a bit of a break now, and we'll come back prior to 12 And Maxine, I'll hand it over to you just prior to 12.
Hey, Max.
Thank you.
If we, so just based on the advice there as well, could we, are we wanting to move into public excluded or?
No,
Well, actually,
No,
if we're adjourning the meeting, if we're doing this outside the meeting, then we may as well move into public excluded, and then we can go straight into public excluded after this. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, I just do question whether on like, would you like this the Māori language moment streamed to the public?
I think it's probably.
Maxine, do you still want me? You're going to say something. Do you still want me to say a couple of words in intro?
Yeah, that'd be
Is that
great, Paula, and then
because I'm going to do that in
introduce the
Te Reo,
Waiata.
so-
Yeah, perfect.
Look, let's just live on the edge, and we'll keep it as part of our public meeting, even
Yeah,
though
great
it's
idea.
not on the agenda, because I think it would be really nice to stream it.
Yeah, so I think if
and
we just
for-
adjourn and save the resolution to the public until after,
Okay.
just to ensure that we don't go off live and then lose that link, because sometimes it will automatically connect it to the previous
Okay.
meeting.
That's great. Okay, see you all in a
Donovan,
couple
we're
of minutes'
looking
time.
forward to your version. You've been swatting, haven't you, Mark Donovan? You've been swatting. I know you have.
That was part of the challenge, Mayor Paula, that councillors and others learn the words of the Waiata by heart. So looking at your camera, eyes on your camera, and words in your head.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
You've never heard of auto cue, have you?
I think, Mark, you should do that thing. I thought it was a bit old school, but I thought it was quite funny, and I hadn't time to do it. You know, when you get a piece of paper with the lines on.
Piece of paper with the lines on?
You know, when they have
Yeah,
the
hold up the
signs
words.
and yeah, that would have been quite cool.
Mm.
And then, but no, I never had any time because actually I'm working. You know, go figure. So, Mark Donovan, I'm calling you later, just so you know. Just be prepared. Just going to give you a call later. Yeah. Are we still being recorded, by the way? We seem to be.
Yes, yeah. So I'll just confirm there. So we have adjourned the meeting, but we are still recording. We're currently streaming. So if you want to return to the microphones to start the Māori language moment, Paula, I know that you want to speak.
Just a couple of lines into that.
And so if you want to decide if you want to start that at 12, is that in? I'm assuming that's in Te Reo?
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll just welcome everybody a little bit before then, you know, just in a couple of minutes, in a couple of minutes, I think, and then hand over to Paula, Mayor Paula, and she'll lead us into the Waiata. And Narelle, if at that point you could just ensure that you've got last year's Waiata ready for the audio and can then mute us, and then we'll invite everybody, of course, to show themselves on the in their camera. That would be great.
Fabulous.
And then also, Narelle, if you could capture I don't know, I guess it's being recorded, but if you could capture a screenshot, that would be kind of useful too, to be able to share on social media.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
Comms and what have you.
I'll just practice my mouthing.
And that's what you normally do with me, isn't it? You're on mute, Paula. Yeah. I think what we should do for Sign Language Week, because I know I could achieve this, is to get my friends and I films to teach us sign language to our Waiata. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Mm. And I know that Norm wants us to get us doing traditional Māori hand movements during the song too. So that's
Norm and
also
I are talking about hitting up a couple of friends of mine that got a recording studio as well and getting a proper version of it.
Cool.
Quite fun. Look out, Poye, here we come. Kiri
Do you want
Roa
me-
Māori Club.
Do you want me to do the harmonies?
Yeah, you're the break dancer in the video.
Actually, that's why we've got Melanie Hill on board as well, because she's very good at the harmonies. Shout out to you, Mel.
Yeah, no, that'd be good.
I must say, it's a very beautiful waiata. Well done.
Yeah. So you know who wrote it, Karen?
No.
So Norm Hill, who's one of our Māngai Māori, he wrote it. So we had a retreat very early on in our new council and talking about cultural awareness and tikanga and things like that. And just in the corridor as we were walking to the comfort stop rooms, Norm and I exchanged it had come up in general conversation. So I said to him just very flippantly, "Oh, you could write us a song, Norm. You've got your guitar. You could write a song, couldn't you? We should have our own waiata like they did at regional council." And anyway, next minute, or as they say, he had a song for us. And so, you know, with his guitar and Bunty's guitar, we were able to make it sound good most of the time, except for that one time, Maxine. The one time at Ruakura.
That's right. But I give us points for actually doing that. We were invited by TGH to come along to one of their events, and there was beautiful speeches and waiata after each of them. And after Mayor Paula, I said, look, we just have to be able to get up and do that. We weren't that great, but we were very well received for our effort.
No, we were more than not great, but yeah, there was 4 of us, wasn't there? I think.
Yep.
Martin, Ryan, you and me, and no guitar, Mark. No guitar.
Oh no.
No.
Never mind.
Hang
However,
on,
we're
Sarah.
getting really close to midday, so no mai ki te whānau or te kunihira or kirikiriroa. Te wiki o te Māori is a time for all New Zealanders to celebrate Te Reo Māori and to use Māori phrases in everyday life. By singing our waiata together today, we'll be helping to set the world record for people speaking and celebrating an endangered Indigenous language at the same time. So thank you to all of you who have agreed to join in. I just ask you to turn on your cameras if you're in this meeting and help to join in with our singing. I'm going to hand over to Mayor Paula now to introduce the waiata and to lead us off. And just as a reminder, Narelle will mute us all, but you'll be quite visible through your camera in the singing that you do. And Narelle will play our last year's recording of the waiata in order to be able to get over the audio disturbance of everyone singing on Zoom. So thank you, and to you, Mayor Paula.
Kia ora, Maxine. Ko tēnei te wiki o te reo Māori, no reira, and nei te tahi waiata e tuhia mō mātou a kirikiriroa. So it is Māori Language Week. This song was especially written for Hamilton Kirikiriroa by our Māngai Māori, Norm Hill. Aroha mai, Norm, and here we go.
You got that, Narelle?
Hey,
Oh, well done, everybody. A bit of a glitch in the middle of there, but we get through these things.
That was our
Thank
best
you,
bit.
Maxine, and we gave it a go. We were on 12 o'clock. We were singing with a lot of people around New Zealand. So ka pai tō mahi. Thank you for that, Maxine.
Kia ora, Maxine.
Kia ora, Maxine.
Okay, that was just a little bit of a shame that cutting out right in the middle. I really, sorry, my printer's just going by itself. I sort of really needed that musical background to keep me up with it, but at least we tried. So well done. Hey, look, we'll move back to the strategic risk and audit meeting. We are at item 16 of the public agenda, and that is the resolution to exclude the public on page 96. So I will move the recommendation there on page 96. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mark. All of those in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. Against, carried. Right, so we'll now move into public